Hey, folks. Here's your opportunity to skip the stress of long lines and last-minute scrambles this holiday season. SunsetLakeCBD.com not only makes shopping easy, but they also ship directly to you and your loved one's door. Until December 22nd, everything on SunsetLakeCBD.com is 25% off when you check out with the coupon HOLIDAY, which makes sense. That's not all. Orders over $100 qualify for free shipping. Orders over $125 will receive a free jar of Sebede gummy bears, and every order will get a free mystery sample. Now is the time to do this. And you know what? You can buy yourself a gift, too. You don't have to buy it for anybody else. That's the way I'm operating now. Anyways, SunsetLakeCBD.com, one of my favorite sponsors. I love their products. Their Good Night Oil is fantastic if you have trouble sleeping. But they've got gummies with melatonin. They've got gummies with different types like cordyceps and ashwagandha. So you got focus gummies, and you've got relax gummies. And then, of course, they've got lotions and salves and smokables and fudge. Sebede coffee. Why not stuff your family stockings with some farm fresh Sebede this year? It can help your parents find relief from achy joints, and you help you deal with the stress of holiday travel to go see your parents.
Exactly.
I mean, your mileage may vary on that, but Sebede, very, very helpful. I've had some stressful times over the past couple months, frankly, and some tincture goes a long way. Head over to SunsetLakeCBD.com. Use the code HOLIDAY to save 25% and get some freebies. The sale ends December 22nd. See their site for terms and conditions. Check this out. Great company, great business practices, great movement partners. I've mentioned many times they've donated tens of thousands of dollars to everything from carceral reform, Planned Parenthood, refugee resettlement, and strike relief funds, and more. SunsetLakeCBD.com. Use the code HOLIDAY. You get 25% off. Now time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, December 20th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be joining us. Ryan Grimm a little bit later. Also on the program, Republican spiraling sends us hurtling towards a government shutdown. This as Trump's oligarchy takes over and Elon Musk endorses a near neo-Nazi party in German elections. Starbucks workers in 3 West Coast cities go on strike. Amazon Teamsters continue their strike, their 5-day strike on day 2 now. And a day after the Fed rate cuts, key inflation measure rises less than expected. Biden administration's education department wiping student loans for another 55,000 people. Matt Gaetz, remember him? Well,
Yeah.
He threatens to expose lawmakers' harassment settlements if his ethics report gets released.
Oh, the Madison
Sure.
Cawthorn route he's going down.
And I would say, yes, please. All of it. And more. Release all the documents. Trump puts his $4 billion worth of shares of his media company in a trust operated by his son.
Ah, well, I'm sure he'll just completely have no connection to that going forward.
New report, U.S. has twice as many troops in Syria as previously reported,
Oy.
which means that we probably have 3 times as many troops as previously reported in Syria. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is
Casual Friday, and the last live Casual Friday of the year.
That's correct. This is our final live show. I should just qualify that by saying it's not inconceivable that Emma or I will jump on the YouTube stream. Yeah, I guess it's pretty inconceivable to Emma. But it's possible. It's not inconceivable. One can conceive of it.
Yeah.
Highly unlikely.
Right.
But I'll have reason to want to at times to jump on
To rant.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see if something like breaks in the coming weeks. But last time we had one of those emergency live stream things was when Biden dropped out, I think.
Yeah. That's
Oh.
true.
Remember those days?
I do remember those days. But we have some great best ofs. Do we still have time for any YouTube best ofs things? Okay. We do have, if you still have some YouTube selections of best ofs, send those to us at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Put into the subject line best ofs. And Matt will drop those in as a little, what do they call them? Easter
Goodies.
eggs?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
No, they won't be as hidden as Easter eggs. They'll just be right at the end of the episode.
Well, you won't know they're there until you hear them.
It's like dessert.
Yep. And I don't know if we have any other house cleaning before then. Do we have anybody in the waiting room yet?
Not
No?
quite.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working around. I think Representative Ocasio-Cortez's pretty hectic schedule as the government shutdown could. The government funding deadline is today. Tonight.
And why don't you just let us know the most recent report of what we're hearing about the potential for legislation?
Right. So I think basically as of what Jake Sherman of Punchbowl is reporting so far, that there's going to be multiple votes, basically, that they're splitting up the continuing resolution into 3 parts. One that is the continuing resolution to keep the government funded through March. That is the update that we have so far. And parts of the farm bill that were at issue, I think, with the Republicans. And then disaster relief, which will likely fail because Democrats want that. And then after that, they will also vote on the other agricultural piece.
All right. So there it is. We've got, I think we got another 5 minutes. Apparently they've got to download Chrome.
Oh.
So, no, I understand.
Yeah. It's only compatible with Chrome, I guess.
Let's, in that case, I saw the text, Bradley. Let's listen to Representative Mike Lawler. This is a guy from New York's 17th district. This is the guy who beat Mondaire Jones for the 17th. And that whole sort of corridor there has been a mess for Democrats now. And
we have someone in the waiting room, just so you know. Okay. Yeah.
Do we have somebody?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My bad.
Okay. So here is Mike Lawler on CNN talking to Caitlin Collins.
I will always do what I think is right, which is why, to me, the right answer here was to keep the government funded, and why I find it so jarring that every single Democrat except 2 voted to shut the government down. Not because
But
they
so
didn't
did 38
agree,
House
not
Republicans,
because they didn't. Yeah,
including
Caitlin.
one sitting right here.
Caitlin,
Totally different reasons.
Totally
But-
different reasons.
But you still voted the
Yeah,
same
but Caitlin,
way.
here's
There's
what I
38
think
House
you're missing.
I know 38 House
Yeah, but
Republicans
Caitlin,
voted
here's
against
what you're
this.
missing.
You're counting on
Right, and
Democrats.
197 Democrats voted against
But the
it.
deal that they had
And the reality
negotiated
is,
was blown up
they
yesterday.
negotiated a deal that included a lot of pet projects that they wanted.
But isn't that your
The
problem with
fact
Speaker
is-
Mike Johnson, who negotiated
the
that
fact
deal
is-
with them?
No, look, when you
though?
have a
But a
House
Republican
Republican
House
majority,
Speaker
let me answer,
negotiated
please.
that deal, right?
Would you like me to answer, or you want to debate it? House Republican majority,
Debate it!
Senate Democrat majority, Democrat in the White House. Where has Joe Biden been in any of these discussions?
What
did
difference
Chuck
has it
Schumer
got?
do in any of these discussions? Nothing. So you want to just focus on House Republicans. We put a bill on the floor today to keep the government funded. Yes, some of my colleagues voted no. Some of my colleagues have never voted for a CR and never voted to increase the debt ceiling. That's their right. But the fact is, many Democrats have always voted to pass a CR and increase the debt ceiling. And the reason they didn't do that today is because they don't want to lose leverage in the new Congress.
Okay, now
Yes,
stop
he
it for a
is
second. All
absolute-
right, we don't need to hear anymore. The most fascinating part about this is that last line that he said. Democrats always are attempt to keep the government open, but today they didn't play along with our games that we were playing. And, this is the fundamental dilemma that Democrats have. When you shut down the government, it's not just like, some random services don't happen and we'll pick it up in 2 weeks. You've got literally hundreds of thousands, if not a million federal workers who don't get paychecks.
Yep.
And they can't go to their landlord and go, hey, listen, will you cut me some slack? I work for the federal government. I need another week. I need 2 weeks.
It
I
affects
need 3
air
weeks.
travel at this particular time where people are going to be traveling for the holidays. This happens every single time.
It screws up the lives of a ton of workers. And yet the sort of conventional wisdom is, well, Democrats are going to automatically vote for it anyways. So, all right, we'll talk more about that in a bit. In fact, we'll talk about it with the Congresswoman in a moment. Do we need to take a quick break? And then we'll come back with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to start off with let's talk about what's going on, obviously, right now. At any moment, you could be called to the floor for a vote. And there's some indication of what it may be. They're now talking about splitting it up into 3 different bills. But just give us your sense of what's going on here, because it feels like 5 days ago, nobody predicted there'd be an issue with this.
We were totally fine. Democrats and Republicans had come to a compromise, CR, just government funding bill. And it's actually funny. It kind of came down to literally maybe like a 3-hour window where the schedule in the House, there was 2 vote series. We're supposed to vote at 1:30 and then again vote at 4:30. And so they were going to put this government spending bill that everyone had agreed to on. There's some talk about putting it through at 1:30. Mike Johnson says, you know what, let's just do it at 4. And in that 3-hour window, Elon Musk tweeted. And it died. And then you have Trump threatening, and basically Trump threatened to primary any Republican that voted for a clean CR. And then Elon tweeted that he was threatening to primary anyone that voted for the compromise CR. And Republicans are in this moment where they don't know who their daddy is right now. And so they are just running around like chickens with their head cut off. And so we're literally in this holding pattern because of this. And it's like this recursive loop that is just shut down the government literally out of nowhere because of a tweet. It's actually insane. Like, it's actually insane.
I was a product of divorce, so I can understand what happens when mommy and daddy fight and you don't know which side to land on. But putting that aside for a moment, one question I have that does not feel like it's going to be addressed whatsoever is the $20 billion for the IRS. Mm-hmm. This was in the last budget. It was a clawback by the Republicans. But if it's a continuing resolution, it could happen again, sort of as just sort of like, I guess, inertia. What is anybody talking about that at all?
Well, I think that this is the core problem that they're in right now, which is that, of course, they need Democratic votes to pass this thing. This conference cannot keep themselves together. And so they keep trying to, but they can't. They're too much at war with themselves. And so it is something that is a priority for us. And it's not something that I think has been left aside or forgotten. This is going to be a big battle, though. And it's not going to be the last time we see this come up.
Right.
Because the Trump tax cuts are expiring next year. And this is actually what this fight is actually all about. This is why Elon is involved in this right now, because he's not tweeting this out of nowhere. He's not coming at this out of nowhere. They are trying to lift the debt limit now because reauthorizing the Trump tax cuts next year are going to explode our federal debt. It's going to explode our deficit again. And they don't want to lift the debt limit then to do that. They want to lift it now. That's why
because that'll draw too much attention to what their tax cuts are doing. And this way, if they split it up, it's less of a story.
And that's why Elon's getting involved. His net worth has, I believe it's almost doubled since the election. Or it's like, this is what was kind of being discussed a little bit among Democratic talkers. Like, they're talking about changes to Elon's net worth since the election. He is trying to further explode his net worth. And he is trying to leverage everything from income from federal contracts to, reducing his own personal expenditures and reducing his taxes. And this is something that we are, this is what this is about for him. Trump has a different set of priorities for himself. He's trying to, line his own pockets and figure out his own political preservation in this moment. And sometimes those things are aligned and sometimes they're not. And I think right now we're in one of those friction points.
It's sort of the definition of an oligarchy where even though these guys aren't these, I mean, even though Trump's not even in office yet, his like billionaire
mob
daddy,
enforcer, basically,
is like controlling whether the government will stay open or not. But let's leave this for a moment because, this is an ongoing story. We're going to find out maybe how this is resolved, at least for the next 3 weeks or 2 months. We'll find that out in a moment. But I want to turn to what's been going on this week in terms of your attempt to chair the government oversight committee. And my daughter had a question that sort of dovetails into this. So I told her I would ask this question. She wants to know, and I think sort of these two questions sort of address that whole dynamic. One is if you feel abandoned by the Democratic Party, and how so, if you do. But also, she wants to know, how do you grapple with having to appeal to multiple different ideological groups within the Democratic Party and your constituency?
Yeah, well, two really good questions. The first one is that I don't really feel abandoned by the Democratic Party because my primary relationship that I care about the most is mass movements and mass movement politics. And part of my job and my role exists forever in this tension point between mass movements and everyday people and the establishment of the Democratic Party. And so that is always like, as long as I exist as a person, I am going to be in this waypoint between these two forces. And what I'm always trying to do is open the windows of possibility for people in the Democratic Party. And so I don't feel abandoned because my job is not to try to gain personal acceptance. My job is to try to build power for the working class. And so I feel like you have to know when to select your battles and when to force the question. And I ran to win. I always run to win. I don't pick fights that I think are losing from the jump, even if they are long shots. But I also felt like this was a win-win situation. And I felt like it was win-win because you win it in a literal sense. We're able to wield this seat. And I think I genuinely ran because I thought it was what was best for the party. And I think it was what was best for the country. And I think it was what was best for people. And that's why I did it. But I also think that it is clarifying. And sometimes when you force this question, it allows us to take measurements about where we are at. And not in a binary perspective, not just in a binary perspective either. It's not just that we won or that we lost. But even in losing, I don't think anybody in the party thought that it would be this close at the start. This is a race among, by definition, Democratic insiders, only among other members of Congress. And this is typically an environment where people like us get crushed. And the fact that it was this close, the fact that some of the most, established and powerful elements of the party had to mobilize to make this result, happen, that we, people were hot on their heels, I think is a very good sign for us. And so that's the first question, which leads to the second question, right, is that in order for us to win, we need to win along several dimensions. And we need to know how to bring people together and cleave people together in kind of different dimensions in addition to an ideological one. If it's forever just progressives versus the establishment, and that's the only frame, then we are outnumbered. But if we can take that, preserve it, we're not abandoning it, but you add generational dimensions, you add class dimensions, you add some of these other things, this is an exercise in coalition building while preserving the integrity of our positions. And I think this was one of our first big swings at it. And I think as far as that goes, there was a lot of really interesting successes in that. This was not.
So that you mean if we were to look at the votes that you got maybe on the steering committee, and if we were to look at the votes that you got on the floor, we would see you could have obviously progressives voted for you, but then maybe there are younger people who have a different idea of what partisanship looks like. I think that is a big part of the generational changes. And there may be also some people who run to the progressive positions on economics, but maybe not on immigration, or maybe not on picket, essentially. Or, because frankly, there are votes that I know that my daughter and I have talked about, and that we've talked about here, that you've taken that we're not excited about, to say the least. The anti-Semitism one in the most recent. But this is part, or you tell me, is this part of like the idea of there are certain battles where you think are maybe less consequential in the long term that you will sacrifice to build these coalitions for the long term?
I think that we are presently in a moment where we have to be really ruthless about what battles we pick, and we cannot pick all of them. And I think we have to be realistic about the political moment that we are in. There are moments where we have the juice to be bullish, and then there are moments where we need to like really strengthen foundationally and preserve. This was a tough year for us. And it's not just about big money. It's about like organizationally on the left, we are in a challenging time. Just everything that has gone on over the last year, there's a genocide that is happening. And this is rightfully been a focus of so much organizing. And it's also caused a lot of not just internal, I think, questioning, assessment, how we do things on the left, but it's also been a moment where we've had tons of dark money, not just, yes, APAC, also crypto, also Wall Street, all these folks that are constantly waiting to pick us off. And so, I think that for this purpose, when we make sure that we fight like hell on the material things, like I vote consistently on withholding weapons, withholding funding for offensive weapons. When it comes to some of like the finer, second and third degree connections on condemning anti-Semitism, if IHRA came explicitly to the floor, I would not vote to ratify it. But I think that we need to be very strategic. We cannot swing at every single pitch because we have to build. And so I do think, for example, internally, one of my big cases about in gaining support, and what is interesting is that the support that we got in this, it was not just like the Progressive Caucus plus the Hispanic Caucus, which were the two caucuses that endorsed me in this fight. We had swing district Democrats that supported me in this. We had New Dems, which is a
Pat Ryan, I think, was one of the most successful of the swing, sort of the purple districts, as it were. And he, I think, spoke
on your behalf, right?
Yes. Yeah. And he outran Kamala Harris by the largest margin of any House Democrat. And so one of the things the case that I was making to the caucus is that I can message on an economically populist message. And that is my intention. Of course, we are going to fight on civil rights. We're going to fight on human dignity. We're not going to let Democrats abandon our trans community. We're not going to allow Democrats to try to run skittish on civil and human rights issues. But the selling point, the most alluring point to bring the party together and to bring them over, we have to make a case of persuasion, which is that there is no other place where we are seeing promise to win back the working class, to win back Latinos, to win back young people than right here. And the message that we can send as a party that has been really kind of cemented in this election by Trump, that Democrats are the party of the elite, which bore out in an electorate in terms of what got hemorrhaged. That the way that we counter that is a populist economic message, which in a progressive frame has the benefit of a multiracial democracy, and that is attenuated with that.
Right. And part of why, I was excited about the prospect of you winning that position to be the top Democrat on oversight was because of the fact that you could communicate that kind of thing with a really large megaphone. And I think part of maybe I saw what you did with your followers after the election, some of the voters who voted for you and Trump. And, Trump's style of tweeting or truthing or whatever, he's lying all the time, but it at least simulates a level of responsiveness to the public. Yes. So my question is just do you think that the Democrats' message on Trump's threat to democracy was undercut by the fact that an overwhelming number of Americans thought that Biden was too old to run for a second term, and yet there was no real primary process anyway? So, I guess in other words, do you think that the Democrats need to build back more trust and legitimacy with their base, democratic legitimacy, by showing more responsiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a big part of what our case was as well. I think it's interesting because a lot of people kind of talk about the gerontocracy of the Democratic Party and the way that a lot of these decisions are decided by seniority. And all of those things are true. But what is also attenuated with that is the fact that it is really hard for a lot of, I think, Democrats to wrap their head around the current media environment that we are in. And there's still this really big attachment to the idea that CNN, MSNBC, the op-ed, pages of the New York Times are where swing voters are and where everyday people are. And as we saw from the election, people who, if you ascribe to that kind of a media diet, you are overwhelmingly supporting Democrats. But there has for a very long, and this was actually part of what part of what I was trying to offer the party is also part of what I think had cut against me in this race, which is that there's this idea that having this, not among all Democrats, but I think among more of the old guard, that having that kind of resonance and responsiveness is gauche and lowbrow and unsophisticated. And it's attention seeking. The fact that a person has attention means that they are attention seeking, as opposed to the fact that they are talking to people. And so I feel okay because at the end of the day, I'm going to keep doing that. I am going to continue to do that. I wanted to do it at behest of not just the party for the sake of the party, but because we are on the precipice of a fascist administration coming in.
Right. And your level of partisanship would have been a benefit, right? I mean, it's also about acting partisan with the Republicans and not exceptionalizing MAGA and Trump and saying Trump is the Republicans and the Republicans are Trump.
Right. And so, but I don't think that window has necessarily passed.
Well, time's sort of on your side on some level in this dynamic, right? I mean, we're seeing that develop. I don't know why it develops more quickly on the Republican side, and maybe that's just because they have a
seniority system.
They don't have a seniority system, and they don't even in the context of their media. They developed, talk radio first. They and then they've put a lot more money into the online stuff, and there's an investment there. And they don't seem as reluctant to do that. And just lastly, because I know you got to go, but part of this dynamic of the way that young people are getting their media now, it seems to me, is that what we've seen with Gaza and what's happening with Israel is akin, in my mind, to what happened with the Vietnam War when we saw for the first time reporters were actually involved in the war. And for people who had more skin in the game, insofar as I could get drafted or my kids could get drafted, that really changed the politics in a way that I don't think the upper echelon or the old guard, as it were, of whatever was happening at that time in this country understood. And I feel like that same dynamic is happening now. If you're under the age of 40, what's gone on in Israel is in Palestine and Gaza in particular, obviously, and the West Bank for that matter, is very different from your perception if you're over the age of 40 because of where you get your media.
I have said this directly to Democratic leadership. I've communicated this to the White House, that this is our Vietnam. This is our, not just like in terms of the party, but this is just our country's Vietnam. And what I think a lot of people do not yet understand is they think this is, that some of these hemorrhages are maybe ideological. They think maybe it is like an ethnic thing. I don't think there is appreciation yet about how generationally radicalizing this moment is, and how shocked people are at how far just like the general inertia is willing to go, as if we're not seeing what's happening right before our very eyes. I mean, we are now at the point where, you know, in where I exist, me calling this a genocide, going to the House floor, delivering a speech saying that the administration is aiding and abetting this is so far beyond the fringe, so far beyond the pale. This is also part of what this dynamic was in this vote too. It came up like, let's just be, to call a spade, that was also an element in this fight. But I think that it is important that we lay these markers down again generationally, because people see what is happening, and we need to have some sort of legitimacy if we seek to reinstate an order around human rights and actual care for democracy. And, you know, that is the benefit of being, of trying to be consistent. And so when I see these losses, they're not devastating to me, because I think they are important waypoints for us to see. It's not just a loss. Like, again, in the context of the Democratic caucus, in the context of a 3-term member of Congress running to become a ranking member of a committee against, you know, someone that has decades of experience here, to gain that waterline of 84 Democrats in an internal fight is actually, it is something that people were taken aback by. And we will see, what do we do with that? I don't know. But it is a chip that we have. And we'll have to see other people we can elevate and support, and see how all of these things interact. But at the end of the day, it's something that I think was a net gain for all of us to be able to engage in.
Yeah, I suspect that 130 on the other side or so were surprised, and they're, I don't know if put on notice is the right way of putting it, but they're aware that maybe there's something they might be missing. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
And good luck with whatever you end up having to
vote
on
or
today.
against.
Hopefully there is something to vote for, because it makes a material difference for a lot of people that we operate the government. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.
You.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Ryan Grimm will be here. We will be talking about some of the same things, probably, with Ryan, as we did the Congresswoman. But I think, you know, maybe we could talk about that. We could talk about it in the fun half a little bit. But it is good to hear her explanation that, at the very least, she has, as far as I can tell, what I think, your mileage may vary, different people, but a rationale for her approach. I think there's right. Maybe plenty of room to argue as to, you know, how that gets executed, but there's a plan there, and it's a plan of a politician, not a plan of you know, someone who is an activist or a media commentator. It's a plan of a politician. It's
about gaining power
and working within a certain context too. Right. And so, all right, quick break. Ryan Grimm, co-founder of Drop Site News, will be joining us in a moment. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It is our final live show of the year. And as such, Ryan Grimm, reporter and co-founder of Dropsite News, also a co-host of Counterpoints, has dressed up. And it's much appreciated. Look at you. Look at you.
A Christmas green as well.
I had a t-shirt on until like just recently. My wife was like, please don't do that. Don't. Come on. Have some dignity. It's like, fine.
I know that's your way of covering for saying that you wanted to dress up. And
no, I would tell you the truth.
But no Windsor not today, so Sam doesn't get to rip into you.
It's his casual Friday dress.
Got it.
Yeah, he really has nailed it. So Ryan, when we booked you, I thought this was going to be like just a full roundup of the end of the year type of thing where we're going forward. But because I thought on Monday it was sort of a done deal that there was going to be, a continuing resolution, very sort of vanilla. There were some add-ons that were in it. This very controversial measure of like paying for disaster relief, or this very controversial measure of like, funding cancer studies for kids and treatment for kids, or but somehow this all blew up. At one point, it looked like this week, wait, are we going to get rid of the debt ceiling forever? And just give us your sense of where we're at this point. It's sort of insane.
I think what we're really looking at is, if you step back, a significant number of steps, what you see is it's kind of an existential fight over the role of Congress. And I say this judgment free. I'm not saying Congress is good and should be part of our system, or Congress is bad and shouldn't be. But I think what Musk in particular is trying to do here is to basically turn Congress into a sub-branch of government that certainly when it's controlled by Republicans is completely at the will and the mercy of the president. And when I say the president, I'm not doing the facetious like Musk thing, but like Musk's ability to primary members of the House in particular, and Musk's reach through social media and his popularity with the Republicans. He wants to be able to tweet something and that be a dictate to the House of Representatives in particular, but Congress in general. And I think he's trying that stuff out now. His post yesterday, I think it was, where he said not a single bill should pass between now and when Trump takes office. Like he wants those to be orders that are just given to another branch of government and just followed. And that is a system of government that a lot of countries have. It's just not the one that we've always had.
That's the amazing thing about this is that, like, we have talked about, and Sanders has been talking about this for, decades, really, in many respects. We're headed this way. We're headed this way. The idea of a billionaire when the party's still out of, it's not like this is Trump's in office. It's not like this is just him sort of almost like transpartisan on some level. And of course, he's just leveraging the Republican Party. But we've had money that, of course, is going to play in primaries, right? Like, we saw this with Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. We've seen it in, Jayapal as well, where like DMFI comes in and, APAC money, or, other big industry. But we saw it with crypto money in Ohio. But the idea that one person has enough money to beat all of these people and it happens to be aligned with all those people I just said, which I don't think is a coincidence, but the idea that he can deploy this and they know, like, there's someone to the right of me who's just as like, and the only thing they have to do is say, and this is their primary, all they have to say is they have more fealty to Musk and Trump or whatever you want to call it than I do. And here's the evidence. And we're 2 years out. You can't get further from their potential.
Like they're not sworn in yet.
That's my point. This is like, he's now threatening like like, he's like threatening politicians in the womb, essentially, with primaries for positions they don't even hold yet, technically. It's fascinating.
Yes. It's never happened before that, even AIPAC, when they go after, half a dozen to a dozen, left-wing Democrats in 2022 or 2024, for instance, like to spend $100 million, they at least had to go out and hold some fundraisers and make some phone calls and hit up individual people for, you can look at their, you can go to the FEC and see like $1 million, $1 million, $1 million, 5 million, 10 million, million, half million. And then you'll see a ton of 6-figure checks all at the same day. So you're like, oh, there was a fundraiser this day. All these people gave $100,000. And eventually they've raised $100 million and they spend it. That is a disproportionate asymmetrical amount of power that they have to basically anybody else in politics until Elon Musk steps in. He doesn't need to even organize a fundraiser among 100 people that give $100,000 or 10 people that give $1 million each. He can just say, all right, here's a super PAC that is going to focus in this district. I'm going to put $5 million in it, and a tiny amount of money for him. And it's going to run ads starting now for 2 years saying that this guy's not sufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. And that has never happened before, ever. Like nothing even remotely close to that has happened. And so if they had a cushion of 10 or 15 votes, I think this game plan would be easy to execute. The fact that there's such a narrow margin means it's going to be tricky, and he's going to cause, I think he may push too far and too fast and screw things up for Trump, and then Trump tells him, you know what, I don't actually, this is not actually helpful to me right now. So that's the only thing. It's not really anything Democrats can do about it. It's just they have to just kind of fail on their own.
But part of also what Representative Ocasio-Cortez was saying to us is that Elon feels that he's reliant on this push for his own financial gain, for tax cuts. That's really what he's in it for. And I guess that probably elongates the level of like the amount that Trump and Musk are tied together. If his self-interest is so specifically tied to this agenda and to the tax cuts, then like the breaking up of the two over their egos, it's going to be harder to pull off, which I naively thought maybe they had a chance with some of the trolling, but it doesn't seem like that's happening.
And let me just add,
they're feeling themselves.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
Like like this whole thing about President Musk, so that it gets under Trump's skin. Look, if I thought it was in my power, I would, I would stoop to like putting, when we were kids, they had little like asbestos tins of like itching powder, and I would put that in, I'm not above any of this, but in terms of efficacy, this whole President Musk thing is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because let's say Musk was to go away, and then you still have the same problem. Like this is a problem with Republicans. If it wasn't Musk, it would be Miriam Adelson. If it wasn't Miriam Adelson, it'd be some other billionaire. I mean, to make it about Musk is stupid because there is no long-term messaging there. But the other thing is, in what world is it in either Musk's or Trump's best interest? Even if Trump is literally like a baby, and they still are going to be smart. Like maybe they're not going to hang out as much, and somebody's going to write a story in the Post or the Times like there seems to be a chill between Musk and Trump. Who gives a shit? Because at the end of the day, their interests are aligned. They're both basically, autocratic kleptocrats. And it's just like they may have to negotiate. You know what? It's not 50-50 anymore. It's 60-40 or it's 35-65, whatever. Like, this is the dumbest thing. This is so baby brained. This is junior high school stuff. And we need people playing in the big leagues, it feels like.
And so what I mean by them failing is that they are unable to run their operation. In other words, let's say that they do actually shut the government down. Musk is, obviously a very intelligent guy, off the charts IQ, that sort of thing. He really has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to government.
None.
I don't think he understands what the consequences would be for the Trump administration of shutting the government down for the entire transition. Like, if you don't call the inauguration essential services, he doesn't even get to give a speech outside of Congress. He'd have to do his swearing in inside the White House.
Musk doesn't care about that, though. Musk doesn't care about that.
Musk doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
This is where interests are disaligned. Like,
right.
Obviously, Trump does care about that. But the transition is much more than just the party on the
Oh
ball.
my gosh, they would be starting 90 days late, essentially.
And that's a misaligned incentive right there between the two of them. Musk might be fine with all that chaos. His net worth might grow, might not, but it might at that time. The weaker the government is, the more powerful, he is. But Trump, I think, is actually enjoying this round of his election so much more than 2016. 2016, he won as a fluke. He lost to Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes, which he was mortally embarrassed about. He squeaks through because of this technicality of the Electoral College and these really narrow wins in 3 states. He spends all his time fending off these charges that actually he didn't really win because Putin helped him. The day after he's inaugurated, he's defending his pitiful little inauguration crowds while there's 5 million people, mostly women, which is deeply offensive to him, marching in the streets against him.
Yeah.
And his approval rating is like 20s, 30s, like out of the gate. He was miserable and lashing out and cranky. I think you can just feel his vibes. He's feeling his oats a lot more this time. He loves that he actually won because he does trust the numbers now. And Musk risks that honeymoon with like a stupid government shutdown the entire time. So that's what I mean about that they just might not have the competence to pull it off. And also Trump is surrounded by
I don't know
morons
what they could pull off. Like I don't even know what pull it off ends up being at this point. Like they've already damaged themselves. Even if they get their continuing resolution, they're not going to get the erasure of the debt ceiling. It seems to me it's either going to have to be completely gone or as it is now, so that he has to deal with it. Because as the Congresswoman was saying to us, like they don't want those two things to be the tax cuts and the debt ceiling to be sort of like in any type of proximity with each other, because then people start doing the math. And what's his face? The bald guy. Chip Roy gets on the floor and he's like, "Why? What are the Republicans?" And so I don't know. This is it is fascinating. It's a lot more interesting than I thought maybe it would be. It's also terrifying. Like we've arrived now. You have one guy who has the ability to essentially, and remember, $1 billion for a campaign to raise is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
I don't know what the record is,
like a presidential campaign. Yeah.
Yeah. And he can deploy this and still have 200 times more money than he had 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Like it's insane. The amount of power that this guy now has because of his money, the money that he's amassed. The idea that we don't have like 12 alarm bells going off and it's really just more about like, who's the real president? I'm sorry that we are not meeting the moment with that stuff. It seems to me, but so what do you think the prospects are for the future?
I mean, a shutdown would be such a mess for them that I feel like they're going to capitulate and get it together, but maybe not. I don't like they might just screw this up. Like it's possible.
Do you think that also what is scary for me, at least it's scary that it's almost like Donald Trump's constituency, there's not really much of a promises that were even made really in the campaign except for Project 2025, which he distanced himself from, but cuts and cuts and cuts, and immigration. All of this stuff, this looting of the government and the taking a wrecking ball to the administrative state, there's also no constituency that he has to respond to. That's the other part of this,
Right.
which is like the substanceless campaign outside of just hate. Like that element, I think, emboldens him further.
Yeah, and also I think what Musk is doing here has so much of an artificial element to it that's one reason you could actually see Republicans like getting themselves back together, dusting themselves off, and actually passing this again. Like Musk had the ability to stop the thing, cause absolute total chaos, but that wasn't because like a million people marched on Washington. Yes, there's a bunch of people retweeting his posts that he puts in front of everybody's face, but it is still somewhat artificial. And so if he takes his foot off the gas on it, then it just goes away. It's not as if it's this organic movement that is going to continue on its own. The Republicans are going to try to move on their own. But yeah, I think the promises Trump made are he's going to entertain his supporters, and he's going to cause pain, either public or civil or criminal, for his supporters' enemies. Like those are the things he's going to do, and he's already, I think as long as he does that sort of stuff theatrically, he'll like that's what he wants to do. Like, and then I feel like he'll deliver. Now, other people around him, want real material, substantive results. But him, I think he's happy to just like, if you notice this recently, he's like browbeating the EU. He's like, if the EU doesn't buy more oil and gas from the United States, it's tariffs all the way down for them. And so he gets to make this huge threat about these gay Europeans. And then he gets to back down when he points to some numbers about oil and gas that they bought.
That seems to be, I want to turn to sort of the Democrats and ask you what you thought about the AOC, but it seems to me that like there is a world in which Trump's most excessive things are just used as like, threats that he knows people don't really follow. He just like, it's a way for him to rack up wins.
And that half of his people told pollsters they liked him because they didn't think he was going to do those things.
Yes.
They liked that he said it, but they also they don't believe that he's going to do it.
And so he's going to be able to just talk about wins all over the place for stuff that is almost pre-existing, and claim that it happened because, he knows how to negotiate and bargain. Yeah. I mean, if you happen to believe that government actually has a function, it's not a great strategy. But if you're looking just to sell a brand, I mean, it's a great strategy because there's really very little cost associated with it, and it's hard to lose in that situation. All right. Yeah. So with that said, give me a sense of what you think, like, where is the Democratic Party in terms of like being able to deal with this? What's your take? Let's just start with this AOC committee chair race. What's your takeaway? I mean, she seemed to argue that 84 votes was good. It gives a marker. She wanted to win. She thought she could win maybe, but that 84 votes is a good marker as to like where the balance of power across various different planes, if you will, exist.
And here's the saddest part, that she's right about that when it comes to the perspective of members of the House. Like Democratic members of the House genuinely were surprised that she got as many as 84 votes. And like the sad part is that A, it's only 84 votes, and B, that they're surprised about that, and C, that it shows that they actually don't have any interest in radically rethinking the way that they do politics.
Yeah.
Like if they, like a shellacking like this to some institutions would yield a radical rethinking of what they're doing. All right, what have we done wrong here? What has been working? What works for us that we can put out in front? And what can we do differently? Instead, they're comparing themselves to 2022, 2018, saying like, hey, it's a fourth term, she's coming into her fourth term and she won 84 votes. Like that's historic compared to what it was like in the 90s, or what it was like in the 1950s, and what it was like in the 1930s. So they're still stuck in this thinking of themselves as this long, continuous institution that changes extremely slowly, while the entire world is spinning around them at an exponentially faster rate and breaking them while they're not even noticing.
I had Dan on the other day on his piece, how the Democrats are rudderless. I mean, because when you say they, it's almost like giving they too much credit, as if they are an entity, as opposed to just, a bunch of people who just happen to find themselves in the same cloakroom. And, maybe within, somewhat aligned in terms of policies, but, some not, frankly. And there seems to be such a massive vacuum of leadership. Yep. And I'm not even talking about somebody who's like actively being a leader, but like to look to Chuck Schumer for any type of direction, right? In many respects, he's the most senior. Well, he's the most senior elected official, a Democrat, and to look to him for any type of like signal of like where should we head is like it's like some type of like Escher painting. Like all you're doing is you're looking back at yourself somehow. Like you look at him and you just see you're looking into the mirror.
So Democrats have spent 40 years now, basically since Reagan, being not Republicans rather than being anything, which makes for, like you said, a coalition of people who look around at the cloakroom and are like, what do we have in common other than the fact that like we're not Republicans? And Republicans are now changing, substantially. Like the Republican Party of 2024 is not the Republican Party of 94 or 2004. And so if you're a party that has no identity other than not being Republicans, but Republicans are all changing in weird ways that are confusing to you, then what are you?
Right.
Rudderless is what they are. Yeah.
Do you see like where, like, I guess it's just a question of like, it's impossible to sort of predict who emerges as a leader out of this. I mean, certainly that vote in the House was like some sense of like, well, we definitely don't think it's going to be AOC, or we don't want it to be AOC.
It's Jerry Connolly.
Jerry Connolly.
Run.
I mean,
I'm excited already.
Of all the esophageal cancer patients in their 70s, he would be the one I would want. No, I would say that. Like, let's be honest. For a guy who has esophageal cancer and in that age,
he's
got some pep in his step, and that's
now or never, Jerry. Yeah.
DEI hire. Yeah. I mean, I guess but that I guess brings us to the Wall Street Journal 50 sourced piece that came out this week about Biden, which we went through yesterday. And the leadership vacuum that he's left is, I think, one of the worst parts of his legacy, the genocide that he supported. Pretty big stain. But that element of like them knowing as soon as 2019 that they didn't want Jill Biden out there because she looked more energetic than her husband, 8 years younger than him. You're already doing that kind of management. And then, frankly, it's why Harris was in the closet. They weren't putting her out there to highlight that contrast either. So Biden consciously undercut any other leadership opportunities for Democrats that were rising. Didn't even need to be her, and it probably wouldn't have been at the end of the day. But because it was all this group of sycophants insulating him from questioning, and also making sure that there was no question. He's the president. That's it.
Yeah, we just reshared on the Dropsite Twitter feed the Julian Castro debate moment from 2020, if you remember, where he was basically driven out of the race for calling out Biden for being mentally infirm. In 2019, if you remember, when Biden was campaigning in Iowa, there were all these stories about how he would speak to audiences of, say, 50 people. 10 of those would go in as supporters, and like 2 would emerge still supporting him, like because of his sheer inability to string sentences together or to seem remotely presidential. This was 2019 in Iowa. He then finished 4th in Iowa as a result, because Iowa voters
Get up close. Yeah.
actually saw him, and they're like, no, this is ridiculous. Then he finished 5th in New Hampshire, because New Hampshire voters also get to see people up close. And then in Nevada, it's 2-person race between him and Bernie. Bernie beats him 2-1.
Yep.
Democratic voters knew in 2019 that this guy was not ready to be president. They were looking for anybody but him. And then they're just told by Obama and Clyburn and Buttigieg and Klobuchar and MSNBC and CNN, with their hundreds of millions of dollars of earned, unearned media, saying like, look, everybody's consolidating behind Biden to beat Bernie. And
well, I mean, to be
like,
fair,
okay, yeah.
Listen, there was a real fear amongst a lot of us that if Bernie won, we would be lined up in Central Park and shot because of
look at
being on the
Luigi
wrong side.
Mangione. I
Yes.
mean, later we'll play Eric
He would-
Adams saying how we need to respect CEO trauma right now, and that there's not enough of sensitivity about this class of individual and their trauma.
And for viewers who've forgotten, that's it. Chris Matthews said that on air.
I was in that room that night and went up afterwards on the air, and I was like, well, "Excuse me, what are we talking about here?" And but and that is on Obama, right? Like, there's, why Chuck Schumer? Like, somehow Chuck Schumer's not in that Wall Street Journal piece, right? I mean, you can almost hear
you can hear his aides speaking anonymously. Yeah.
Yes, but you can hear Chuck Schumer himself like running as far away from like any mention in that piece as possible. But the fact is like, where was Chuck Schumer 2 years ago, who was the titular head of the league? Where was Barack Obama? I understand. Listen, I've been in that business. You got to be available for meetings. If you're pitching a show, you guys, when you're coming up with a show, you're like, that's the whole world you're inhabiting. Like, what are the characters like? What's going to be the arc? But if you're going to dip in to the election, the primaries, which, like, okay, anybody can be a political actor, but like, do you have no sense of obligation to sort of like, if you're going to exercise that kind of power, do you, my Uncle Ben used to say to me, with great power comes great responsibility. And I mean, honestly, it's so ridiculous the way that these people are operating. And I feel the same thing about the incompetence of people like Pluff and like Cutter and, Dylan, that their incompetence is bred by a certain ideology. Like, that sort of ideology breeds a certain type of incompetence, because it's just, there's a lot of CYA and there's a lot of like, well, what can you do?
Right. Because it's kind of accountability free. Like the bigger risk would be losing to the left than losing to Republicans that over their entire career. So that's really molded them. It's what's so stunning about their belief that they were going to be able to run Biden again was that the only reason they were able to run him that time was because of COVID scenario, and then COVID. Mid-March, we didn't see him again through November.
That was the best thing that could have ever happened to his campaign was
Biden in the basement.
I can't leave, because of COVID. And on some level, like that.
And Trump being the actual president and everybody wanting him out.
Yeah.
So they had those two things going for them, and they had zero of those things going for him, and they had him 4 years older than he was.
Right.
So how they thought they were going to be able to force that down people's throats is beyond me.
I don't know if we can calculate the cost of Biden's inability to use the bully pulpit, especially in the communications environment that we live in now. Why AOC is potent, which is what I said to her, and why Trump is. They are trying to talk to you directly. And Trump's lying by Truth Social or whatever. But it feels to voters like a level of responsiveness that a guy like Biden, who didn't say anything publicly, basically, for the final 2 years of his presidency, they didn't feel that on top of all of the other reasons that we talk about with him. And no president ever gotten reelected with his approval rating, and
Right.
It bore out.
And he was the most economic populist president we've had since probably FDR, and he never said a word about it, or he never said a word that anybody could like absorb.
Could understand.
This is the paradox, right? Like, because you read that piece in the Journal and you start to wonder, like, okay, his administration was the most populist, certainly of our time, and the value. This is frankly like why, like, I was like, I'm happy. I don't. If we have a Reagan situation, and I think the Reagan situation is very analogous to this on some level, except for, Reagan was. It was almost like built in that Reagan was going to be a little bit like that, and whatever. It was a different era in terms of like exposure. If it was 50 years ago and there's only 3 stations, Biden could have maybe won again. In that environment. The Reagan era, you just had some of the worst players in U.S. government were basically running the ship, and he was not.
Yeah. So I think you're right.
With Biden, we had, early on, he farmed out antitrust to Elizabeth Warren. He farmed out labor to Bernie Sanders. And he basically farmed out, and we didn't,
Ron Klain's running the show.
Yes, he farmed out foreign policy to Dick Cheney, essentially. And I maybe not literally, but
Brett
certainly
McGurk
pretty
and
close.
Jake Sullivan.
And these people are of that ilk. And then just like, everything was just trying to have as many good days as you can.
It says in the piece in 2021 that an aide said to the other, he has good days and bad days.
Yes.
And then he wasn't receiving the polling information. It wasn't clear because the pollsters weren't allowed to talk to him directly in 2024.
It doesn't sound
going
like
to
he
fucking
could
Mike
process
Donnellan.
it. But my point is like, short of who he farmed out foreign policy to, I'm okay with a caretaker presidency, like as in there needs to be a caretaker for the president, and other people are doing the actual stuff because he had basically given it out to different people. But it turns out you also got to run for president.
Yeah, and one piece of evidence that it wasn't really him running it, because this wasn't his politics for the 60 years or whatever that he's been in politics, and that phrase that they use to describe his populist economics, from the middle out, it makes no sense. Nobody understands what it means. You focus group it, people are like, what is what? But I think Biden liked it because he's middle class Joe. He calls himself that, and so I think they framed the economic politics that they wanted to run as this middle out to him. Like, he was the only audience, I think, for that ridiculous brand that they put on it. And they're like, all right, if we can get Joe bought in by calling it middle out, let's just call it middle out, and then we'll do our thing.
Are you guys doing the middle out? Hey man, where's the
same with foreign policy for the middle class? Remember that? That was how Jake Sullivan sold his foreign policy. Foreign policy for the middle class.
Yes.
Yeah.
What does that mean? They're
sense
invested in arms dealers?
It means that, like, when we're hawkish on China.
One person.
Yeah, right. Well, right, exactly. You're right. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't really make sense. It just lands in his brain, and a light goes off, and he hears the word middle class.
Yeah, he must have been like, God damn it! I've been doing this for 60 years, and I never thought of that. Damn it!
How generous of you to assume he had the thought.
No, damn it! That sounds good.
Yeah. People are going to love this. Oh, and the other piece of
Hunter,
evidence,
get in here.
He was always calling Larry Summers for advice. Larry Summers was completely shut out by his entire economic policy team because they thought all of his ideas were incorrect, like a Kramer style. Whatever he says, let's do the opposite.
Right.
Yet Biden would talk to him regularly. But then his whatever he told Biden would just be completely ignored. So I think that's another indication that was just the way they placated Biden. Like, all right, it's called middle out, and Larry Summers likes it. Here, talk to Larry. And Larry would tell him, just don't do all the things that your team does.
Do you want to read the latest Matt Iglesias piece, Mr. President? Here, look at this.
Yes.
And Micah and Joe, they look so good today, don't they?
They're my friends.
All right. So Ryan, this is our final live show of the year. And we've talked about the now sort of like not theoretical, but we've reached oligarchic stage, like in a very obvious fashion, I think. And we've talked about the fecklessness of the Democrats and the fact that we had a pretend president for 4 years. Positive note. What's going to be positive in 2025?
So, AOC, I think you got a little bit of news out of AOC there that could be in a positive direction that I could underline. When she said that as she was running for ranking member, the case that she made to the caucus was that she would lead with economic populism, and that she is very good at messaging around economic populism. And she was contrasting that with leading around the cultural politics. That's why she said, that's why she followed it in your interview by saying, don't worry.
I'm still
multiracial coalition. Yeah.
It's like whenever you start saying that, it's clear you de-emphasized it. And she's specifically saying that she's de-emphasizing that and re-emphasizing the economic politics, economic populism. And, I think that's a good thing. It's no secret. That's what I've always felt. I think that you actually will win the cultural fights by winning those fights. Like, I think you fight and lose on the cultural fights, then you lose them both. You have to fight on the economic populism, and then you win them both.
Yep.
I definitely saw it in the context of when I mentioned Pat Ryan and said immigration, because I just happen to know, like, I'm familiar with Pat Ryan.
That's your man, right?
No, I mean, I'm the 19th. He's the 18th. Oh. If he was the 19th for a brief moment, but right. He used to do regular interviews on on the radio station I listened to up there via the internet. It's very effective. And when he was county supervisor. And, he is I think like definitely has the sensibility of an economic populist. I think he's probably more to the left in general than he is as a, politician. He's a vet. His immigration stance, I'm not terribly thrilled about. He got, and that was really the one that probably the one position that he held that I don't subscribe to. In New York State, it's a very difficult environment right now for that because of the way that Hochul and Adams, I mean, it's been framed that way, and Swazi's win, right. That's like you're really swimming against the tide. But he ran on two things in terms of what his mass media was: Social Security, protecting Social Security, and abortion rights. And, Social Security is the Democratic populist message. That's where it all emanates from, it seems to me. You want to expand Social Security, there's you understand the value of a universal program and getting everybody involved, and you understand the value of mandates and all of this. All of the sort of Democratic populist measures are manifested through Social Security. And I think we're watching the maturation of a politician. It's just, hopefully it's not like the maturation process is not like a Nancy Pelosi maturation process, right? I mean, but I don't know if San Francisco was ever about populism, even 40 years ago when it wasn't like it is today in terms of where the money is.
Right. And she always represented the establishment wing of the San Francisco Democratic Party against its more insurgent wing anyway.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm trying to sum up your positive message. So
some
AOC's
Democrats are going to lean into
Economic
your
populism.
Wow, that's really
material
tepid.
concerns.
That's
Yeah.
really tepid. That's a very tepid positive message for 2025. Anything else? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think they're already talking about, candidates for 2028. So the idea that 2024 is going to be the last presidential election, I think we can probably put that fear to rest. I think we're going to have more elections. So that's something.
That's good to hear.
That's good to know.
But
yeah.
it's still, 4 years away. They haven't even taken the oath of office yet. So I'm not sure we can bank that. But as Edward Gregorian says on our IMs, this is why they call him Ryan Grimm. And Ryan, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great
Always a pleasure.
2024. Folks should check out Drop Site News. You guys have been breaking stories,
indeed.
it feels like, every week.
Yeah, a lot of good. We're on a roll. A lot of big.
really
hits.
are.
Yeah, good Cuba piece coming today. You'll like.
Oh,
All right. So, folks, check out Drop Site News. And Ryan, have a great holiday
You too.
and good New Year. And we'll see you in 2025.
All right, see you there.
All right. Thanks.
see you, Ryan.
That's why they call him Ryan Grimm, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, before you go, it's a busy time of year. It's going to be busy next year. Things are going to be crazy. You want to save some valuable time? Fewer trips to the grocery store, but you still want to make nice home cooked meals for your kids, for your husband, for your wife, for your parents, whoever it is that you make your food for. HelloFresh. I want to thank HelloFresh for supporting the Majority Report. And here's an offer from HelloFresh. Get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free majority. Not only is HelloFresh a great sort of like ingredient, I don't know what they call it. What's the overall thing? They send you ingredients and they give you obviously a recipe and you create these delicious meals, a lot of which, not a lot, but there's a decent amount of them, enough for me anyways, where you can make them in one pan and you can make them in 20 minutes.
Very nice.
I've had some pork taco stuff that I made for the kids, 20 minutes, cleanup's a breeze, fresh ingredients, delicious. The great thing too about HelloFresh is they have like a market where you can get about 100 different items, staples that you need, stuff that you don't want to have to keep going out to the supermarket for. All of HelloFresh's recipes include high quality, sustainably sourced ingredients, produce that comes fresh from the farm, and there are 50 chef-crafted recipes to choose from every single week. And you can customize these things so the meals can be, exactly as you want them. If you don't want this, you don't want that. Sometimes I'll skip one of my kids doesn't like cilantro. Of course, cilantro is one of the best ingredients there is. And
It is.
But that makes it a little more complicated sometimes, but whatever. If you're traveling for the holidays or too busy to cook at home, you can easily skip a week's delivery if you need to. This is a great service. They have like a cousin, Factor Meals. And so we switch back and forth on those. So I can make some meals and then I can also just heat up some meals. But the HelloFresh is fantastic. It makes me feel like I'm cooking for my kids because I am. Get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free majority. That's applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free majority. Also, another service I've been using for years and years, well before they ended up becoming a sponsor. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you've ever Googled yourself or searched around on some of these people finding sites or whatnot, but your relative's personal information could be sold right on now, and you would know this. And not only do they sell things like home addresses or phone numbers or email addresses that are associated with it, sometimes also social media sites, but if somebody's searching on your relative stuff, they can find your name and your information that way too. Some of these sites are just nuts. And for me, for years and years, it has been an issue that there are people out there who want to send me mean letters or to visit me at times where I have not invited them and people I don't know or whatnot. And one of the ways that I have dealt with this over the years has been Delete Me. They are sponsoring today's program, and I want to thank them for doing that. And I will tell you, Delete Me has been a way in which I have one of the mechanisms, and basically the primary one, in which I have tried to protect myself and my family in particular. Delete Me is a subscription service. It removes your personal info from hundreds of data broker sites. It's a service that removes your information and then continuously does it, because what happens with the data brokers, they have to take it down once they're asked, and Delete Me goes around and asks on a continuous basis. But then after a certain period of time, they repopulate it, and Delete Me is constantly working to pull down your information. This holiday season, give your loved ones the gift of privacy and peace of mind with Delete Me. Take control of your data. Keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting majority to 64,000. That's text majority to 64,000. Majority to the number 64000. And what they also do, I should say, it's not in this copy, but they send an email every month to give you a roundup of like where, what they have done and what's out there.
Yeah.
So very, very helpful. Good for you and your family. Check it out. Folks, this is our final free show
Yes.
of the year, at least live one. We have 6 or 7 really great best ofs.
We'll be back the 2nd for people.
We'll be back on January 2nd, raring to go. Making the plans over the vacation. I'm sitting down, what kind of stuff we're going to do. I think, I could tell you right now, we're going to try and pay attention to what's happening within the context of agencies. So that, to the extent that we can know, it's sometimes difficult to find out what's going on in these things. But so that you can, get a sense of just like what the implications are of a Republican administration, and one that is so explicit in its desire to undermine the efficacy of government and protect citizens from essentially capitalists, corporations who want to privatize their profits and socialize the costs, which means in getting either society to pay for it through taxation and subsidies, or through dealing with, opioid addiction, or dealing with, people having cancer because some company finds it more profitable to dump their stuff in a river, or, scam artists, or selling crypto, or whatever it is. And so that's where at least part of our efforts are going to go. And also giving, we're going to continue to have people on to talk about visions of what could be and other systems which would be better than our current one. And also, looking back in history for lessons of where things might go and what might have been, and where some of these ideologies are born out of and what's driving our politics. And then, of course, we'll keep up with the news of the day, and there'll be more. So I also, and we'll mention this when we get into Fun F, but I want to thank our members, because you guys make it really possible for us to do this show day in, day out. Sometimes we have ebb and flows with advertisements. Sometimes, we feel comfortable like rejecting ads. I
will just say last year, YouTube clearly made a change to the algorithm that I would say cut about 25% of revenue from YouTube just on January 1st.
Oh yeah, no, things there in YouTube, the vagaries of YouTube, we don't, advertise it. We don't pretend that it's like we're being shut out because of our ideology or this and that. And, look, they're a business. They're selling to advertisers. They don't like it. You know, we spent a lot of the year
Talking about Gaza.
and, you know, I don't know that YouTube doesn't have an ideology beyond what's going to make them money and what's going to avoid risk for them. That's the way that, you know, these enterprises work. But we're not going to, our members make it possible for us not to care what the algorithm is doing with stories that we want to cover, or are we, you know, we don't, I can assure you, I'm not even sure how to do this, although I know it's best practices. Look at what trending topics are, what words, you know, we should be putting in our titles. I mean, I hope Dorsey does some of that, but we don't cover stories based on that. Let's put it that way. We just don't do it. And we don't have to because of our members. And I'm not going to say that if we didn't have members that we would do it. We would probably
Because you'd have to learn who Timothy Chalamet is and stuff like that.
I did find out just the other day.
Dune guy.
The Dune guy. I just saw an ad for that Dylan thing, and I'm like, oh, you told me that, right?
Yeah. It's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be good. And I think like.
No, but you told me it was that Chalamet guy.
Yeah.
Who was the Dune guy.
Yep.
And I'm like, this guy's that big of an actor?
Yeah, I mean, he's really talented. I don't know what to tell you. He's really good.
Well, you know, maybe good. I know a lot of talented actors, and nobody knows who they are.
Right. I mean, maybe he could prove his bona fides by spitting out some steak on Sex and the City or something like that.
Oh, that was actually some very good work. I remember that. Anyways, I want to thank our members. Very much appreciated. And if you want to become one, join themajorityreport.com. Also, I want to thank everybody who works on this show. Obviously, Emma, Bradley, and Matt, but folks that you don't see behind the scenes, Dorsey, who is like technically probably, I don't know if he's been here as long as Matt, but he was the first employee of this program, and really made it possible. I ran into Dorsey on the street in 2010. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm thinking about doing a show. And he's like, I'll help you. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have any money to pay you, really. I mean, anything that he's like, I'll do it. And he helped basically get the show off the ground. But also Isaac and Julie, who runs all our business stuff, and Chris and Maria, and then, of course, Jacob and Corey, who do the AM Quickie. And as always, Kyle, who none of this would exist without Kyle whatsoever. Because before I even ran into Dorsey, Kyle had said, I'll set up the tech for you, and made it possible. And I want to thank Matt Binder and Brandon Sutton, who are regularly on the program. And of course, Old Kelly. Appreciate the work she does, like helping us with advertising. But everybody who makes this show possible is just can't thank you enough. And 2025, it's going to be difficult. We got a difficult 4 years ahead of us, but we're going to try and find wins when we can, and at the very least, account for what is happening.
I just want to also shout out our YouTube and our Twitch mods who do a lot of great work for us. They are unheralded, unsung heroes of our online space. So
100%. I met Serious Business on the cruise.
That's right, and of course our mods and our folks from the Discord as well.
Yep.
Yeah. All
right. Emma.
ESPN. Bradley and I gave our picks last of the year. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
And on Left Reckoning, the algorithm's been very kind to Left Reckoning. We shot past 40,000 subs. It needs to get closer to 50. Matt Sitman of Know Your Enemy on Tuesday talking about Trump's victory and sort of where we are. And we also talk about AI. Some fun interviews with Nathan Robinson coming up and some other folks. And also our Bum Steer of the Year nomination is going to go up on this weekend. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
All right.
Juice for Jesus says the last clip I saw, Sam destroys Tim Pool toilet, was pretty algorithmically friendly title for sure. Well, I just want to say my point is that I did not destroy his toilet for the sake of the algorithm.
Yeah, he didn't have to consult the algorithm to do any of that.
That was that was completely organic.
It's in the SAT algorithm.
No, exactly. Now, Dorsey may have capitalized on that. He's an opportunist. But I can assure you, that was not what was on my mind. What was on my mind at that time was like, what kind of damage what's the worst damage I can do to this
people are just
facility?
waiting to hear more about this event and what was on your mind on that front.
That was it.
And what was happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, can you tell us about like the texture, or like you want to get a little more explicit?
Jesus, Emma, you really missed the point of this.
It'd be funny to do a behind the scenes video, and it's just
you know what?
like,
I'll tell you something. There's
point up
nothing.
with the stall.
There is nothing I regret more than not Instagramming that live. Or YouTube living that. And TikTok.
Well, next time you go down.
Oh my God.
God, I need to hang out with
gonna be to
women
Nashville.
more.
Do you know, like, do you understand? Like, our TikTok channel would be so different right now if I had just like shot myself and like, hey, I'm in Tim Pool's, bathroom, sweet toilet, or at least it was.
Show off the bidet part.
Yep.
Yeah, plumbing's probably gonna be better in Nashville.
Just a huge mistake on my part. Missed opportunity. That's a generational problem. Because if I was younger, I would have had the presence of mind to do that.
You know, in France, they have the concept called le spirit de l'escalier, which means the spirit of the staircase, or staircase wit, which is things you come up as you're leaving someplace and you're on the staircase.
Yeah, I should have said that. Yeah.
Le Spirit Toilette.
Should have did a bathroom selfie.
Staircase wit.
Yep.
Taking a picture of your shit. That's like what we're at here.
Listen, who was very into that was Dali, Salvador Dali. We don't need to get into that.
Why do you?
He had a poop journal, folks.
Gosh.
Again, have a happy holiday and happy New Year's. We're just going to take a quick break. We'll be back with the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-2-38-56-27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You got